talk about.
Yeah, we're gonna slide into something different.
Let's talk about
right?
something different here. Something. Well, look, let me set it up because
Go ahead, man.
People don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I'm about to let them. I'm gonna let them know.
So
I'm gonna let them know what
so
I want to talk about.
we are releasing a archive episode on the podcast. And we have released it actually. By the time you listen to this, it'll be with our friend, director, Emmy Award-winning filmmaker, Frederick Taylor. And he brings up a lot of things that we never really got a chance to address on the original interview. And he's a very entertaining guy. Like the way he talks about things is very entertaining. And I actually texted with him recently, and I owe him a phone call. So Frederick, if you're hearing this, I hope I've called you by now. But I owe him a phone call. But I thought, this is a good chance to speak to some of this, especially in a changing society. So Nick, how about that for a segue? I'll hand it to you there. We're in a changing society, and now is a good time to address some of these things that Frederick said way back in, I think, 2022. Believe it or not.
Yeah, and it's no accident, right? This isn't just and this isn't just a repost or republish of an episode. And I hope that everyone has listened to it. If they haven't, please do. Episode with Frederick Taylor, because that content continues to be evergreen. The conversation continues to be evergreen, and there's a lot of this conversation about race. And as Chris and I obviously are two African American males,
what?
They're right, exactly. People are like, wait, what? It is a topic that we would like to discuss, and we love the fact that we've got such a diverse team here that we can have different perspectives on the topic. And Frederick and you, Chris, during this conversation brought up a couple different things that I thought were interesting, and there's 2 points that are really related to one another that I want to talk about as a starting point.
And just to clue in the audience, this was an interview that was a one-on-one between me and Frederick, and Nick and Papa Bear and Sam were not on the podcast. So that's what Nick means when he says that. All right, go ahead.
Yep. So the first one, and I'm not directly quoting, but basically he said, my struggles, so Frederick said this, my struggles begin when I try to take a position of power. And what he meant by that is when he tries to take a position of being a director or maybe producer on a project, that's when the no's start to come in. He gets more no's when he's in that position.
The nose Pinocchio.
There you go. Versus the types of positions that he might be more subordinate, right? If you're holding a camera or a light or you do an audio or something that is, there's a director or producer who's over you. He's found that it's easier to get those opportunities. And you start to question why, right? So as a brown-skinned person, you always have this thing in the back of your head. This is another point that was made during that conversation, which is basically, well, did I get the no because of my resume, or did I get the no because of my race? And it's very difficult to know whether or not it was one or the other, or a combination of the two. So it's a difficult place to be, especially in like you're mentioning, we're in an interesting time right now. And we can talk about the fact that, DEI is now almost like a 4-letter word, even though it's a 3-letter acronym. But it's like a 4-letter word in certain places, and people are pulling back from this. Is that gonna harm people more? I don't know what this is, because this is something that's existed for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's that just opening up the discussion about how do you have that conversation? Like how do you know, is this a chip on the shoulder that will always be there and will never go away? Is there always an element of resume and race? Like, how do we deal with that?
There's a little bit of a creep going on right now in society where you slowly start to see a little bit more every day a person who wasn't emboldened, let's say 15 years ago, who is now a little bit more emboldened, and they write a thing on social, or they say a thing on social, or they say a thing in public, or they do a thing in public that they probably wouldn't have done a while ago. And I actually don't blame I think people have to own their own shit. Like if you go out and you're an asshole, then that's not someone else's fault. You know what I mean? So that's how I view it. You got to own your own stuff. But I have noticed that. So, for example, there was a crime alert, and I follow these sadly, I follow these channels that sort of say, "Hey, this crime just got solved," or "We just arrested these perps." And what I'm seeing now lately, more than ever, is there'll always be at least one commenter in the comment sections is where the party is, folks. If you didn't know, I'm sure you did.
Always.
There's always one person in the comment section that says, "Black guys surprised, ha ha ha," and it's like, white people commit crimes too. Why are black guys kill black guys so much? Well, as Dick Gregory used to always say, because they live next to each other. And when you see white people kill somebody, it's almost always a white person because that's who's next door to them. We kill the people close to us. That's what happens. We fight and interact and live and have community with people who are in our neighborhoods, who are around us every day. It's very strange to drive across 3 or 4 states to go then commit a crime. Right? We call those people serial killers or gangs or whatever, but like it's not an everyday occurrence. And then, so as you start to see that in society, you get more excuses as a black person or a brown skinned person or minority of any kind to say, why did that happen to me? Right? It gives you a reason for your paranoia to blossom. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
it's
why
true.
did I not get this job? Okay. So that was, I just wanted to set that up. Now, the other thing is this. Sometimes you don't know the bigger picture of a hire and you've been given the wrong signal. And I know for us, for example, we've had people come through our doors before, not you, Sam, because you're the best, but we've had people come through our doors before and they get the job, so to speak, especially in the intern space. And they say, well, my resume must have worked pretty well. I did a killer job on that resume. And what they don't know is that we have a bigger contract with a university or 2 or 3. And that part of the contract is we need to take on these people and help them grow in the profession. And so, no, it wasn't your resume. It was that we were going to bring you in no matter what, unless there was something incredibly red flaggish on your resume, unless there was something incredibly red flaggish that happened in the one-on-one interview, the face-to-face for the first time. We're like, that is not good. Can we reset this thing? So for the most part, we're here to enrich people. When we bring in interns, we're here to make them better people. And so I know it's the reverse of what you said, Nick, but it's this thing where, why did I get the job? I got the job because I'm awesome. Pump the brakes. Maybe you don't know the full context of the hiring process or what the full context of what the whole situation is. That can happen to black people too.
Yeah, there's a lot of context that goes into it, but I think that sometimes it can also turn into, and I mentioned this to you guys before, like the boy who cried wolf, where it's like every time you don't get an opportunity, you blame it on the fact that you're a certain race, right? Or you're a woman or whatever that is.
Rightfully
but
so.
But exactly, rightfully so. But the thing is that, so I've kind of lived my life without the expectation that would happen to me, right? So when things do happen that don't go in my favor, I don't lean into that. Like I've never lent into that.
Yep, me either.
But my eyes were opened, and this is the part that even in early talks with Papa Bear about this, about honesty, like it would be so nice if people were just honest with you to your face and like, well, you're black,
giving
so
a good note.
I'm not going to hire you, right? It'd be so nice. But I have been told this. I've been told by other people of that were not black that I was intimidating to people. And you guys know me. Like, how am I intimidating? I'm a nice guy. I live my life in service to other people. So how could I possibly be intimidating? And I said this to this person, and the person said, like, Nick, and he said it to me. He was like, he's got this. You're a young African American. I mean, he said it like, I was like, what? Male, and you're confident. You know what you're talking about.
How dare?
And that can be intimidating to people.
That's why.
So the fact that he brought that in there, like, you're a young African American, and I was like, that never would have registered to me.
Yeah.
But that was it. It's like, well, why weren't they listening? Why weren't they open to what I was trying to say? And he sat me down and he just said, I wanted to explain that to you because that is a fact.
Mm-hmm.
That is the thing that kind of opened my eyes to this being a possibility. And even though I was raised knowing that it could always be one, I wanted to err on the side of positivity. I wanted to err on the side of merit, right? We've heard a lot now, especially now, of this idea of a meritocracy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Get into the positions based off your skills, get into positions based off your experience, get into positions based off of your value. I have all of those things.
Yep.
So to be turned away and not to think is because I'm black, it just makes, it's a conundrum.
Yep.
It's this mystery that I cannot solve until someone was honest with me and said to me, Nick, just so you know, right? It's like my aura, because of my race, is intimidating. It threw me for a loop because the thing is, I can't do anything about that. If you had told me that it was my education, you told me it was my experience, if you told me that I needed to provide value in a different way, if you told me that I needed to wear different clothing, I can change all of those things. But as soon as you tell me that what makes me intimidating is my race,
What do you do
what
with
do I
that?
do?
Well, we're lucky enough to have like sort of multi-generational takes here. Now, Papa Bear, you obviously were married to a black person for 35 years. I don't know if that's obvious to the audience, but Papa Bear was married to a black person for 35 years. And this was a whole different generation. The world
Yeah.
was a different place. And you have, I'm sure, some stories about real discrimination versus faux discrimination. Can you remember any time where, from your POV as a white person, where you saw true discrimination versus invented discrimination? Do you have stories of both that you can?
Well, as far as anecdotes, I mean, there were all kinds of small little things from social discrimination to more formal kinds of discrimination, um, like getting a loan or,
Mm,
uh, going into a restaurant and not being ignored. You know, how there's always someone up front ready to seat you.
yeah.
And we would go in together and standing shoulder to shoulder, and they would say, "Oh, sir, can I table for one?" No, table for two.
Yeah.
Wow.
But um, so there were all kinds of little things. Some of it under the undercurrent kinds of things, and then, like I said, more formal things like getting approved for various things. So, but when Nick mentioned that the guy told him honestly that he was a threat, the first thing I thought
Or
of is,
intimidating. Let's just be clear.
well, intimidating.
Let me be clear.
Well, that's a
Yeah.
kind of threat.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
the first thing that came to mind to me was what he was intimidated about is, are you coming after my job?
Hmm. Yeah.
Because, like Nick said, he doesn't, he speaks well, he's educated, he's qualified, he has all the merit, but yet not getting the job. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's the threat, is that, well, if you're as good as I am, you may be better. And people don't want to give up their turf.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I'm
I've heard that before,
100%
by the
with
way,
you on
Nick and
that.
Papa
But the
Bear, that
challenge
you can't be
is,
too smart when you walk to
yeah,
the
but
interview.
why did he include, again, I'm not trying to get a job. This is just
Yeah.
a matter of getting people to do the right thing, building
Mm-hmm.
coalitions,
Yep.
right? Which is
Mhm.
a part of, being in a workforce. And there was this resistance to building the coalition.
Mm-hmm.
So PB could be right from that perspective that, oh yeah, maybe he's better than me and maybe he'll take my job. Why was my race brought up in the
Why
conversation?
was it
Why
brought up in the
was it
first place? Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
if they had said everything, your education, your confidence, your track record, these things are intimidating. If they had just stopped at that, right, it would have been perfect. But they added in young African American
Young,
male who has
Well,
all of
there's
those things. Why
confident.
is that so intimidating? what is it about that aspect that kind
Well,
of
there's long history of social stigma there. It's like anything
Mm.
else. And it's that history. You're supposed to be afraid of black people from a white person standpoint. So I think that is just history and tradition that's not going to go away until we do have more equality, more mixing. And, you know, um, we've gotten to the point now where you everybody's going to be mixed at
Yeah.
some point, and so then what do you put your finger on? So it's not going to be forever.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
but
going to
these are
Imagine.
things
change.
that I think about. These are things that Chris obviously thinks about. These are things that you've lived, PB, and I'm curious about Sam. I'm curious about, is it even a thought for
Yeah.
you,
Is it
Sam?
post?
Like,
Is
even do
it
you
post
even
race, or does hip hop and all the music and entertainment that you consume give you an image of black people? It's a good. Yeah.
or did you even think about it? Do you even
What do
think
you
about
think?
the
Yeah.
fact that this, because what I just mentioned, Sam, can create the chip on your shoulder, right?
Mm,
Which I was raised not to. I was raised to be aware that I could be treated in a negative way by people who are racist. Right. That period. Raised to be aware that it could happen. But then, as soon as it happens, right, when you're made aware specifically, whether something overt or you have a conversation like I had, you immediately get a chip. It's just there. Like, you can never get rid of it, because now you're aware that this is happening to you, and it could be in any situation at all. So when you think about, I don't know, setting up a team to make a film, to write something, to do something, when you see kids in your class trying to attempt something, like, is race even part of your zeitgeist, right? Are you even considering it at all?
I mean, no, like
See, right.
it, it's not at all something I would consider, especially when it comes to giving someone a job. It comes down to who can perform the job the best. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
that's what it needs to come down to. It doesn't matter what you look like, your gender, your race, anything like that. I mean, it's that simple, and I think that is something that a lot of younger people now, and a lot of my friends, like, are kind of raised with. And it's kind of, I don't know if it's necessarily fading away, but it definitely is changing, and I think it's perspective. You know what I
So if
mean?
you,
Did you
so
know
let me,
anybody in high school that wasn't raised like you though?
mm,
How did you handle that?
yeah.
Could you be a little more specific?
Like, just wasn't raised to do it off merit or whatever, but was sort of raised to see those colors,
Sure.
see those differences.
Yeah. No, I definitely, I think that I didn't necessarily associate with those people the closest.
Right.
I definitely knew of people that thought in that manner, but I think that those people are not going to do as many things as the other people, if that makes sense. I'm
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
phrase it the right way, but you see what I'm saying. Like, I think
Yeah.
that is a limiting factor. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's a good way to put it. So it's interesting. Like, so it's a limiting factor to have a limited mindset.
Exactly.
Yeah. 100%.
Exactly.
But here's the thing, Sam. So this is now kind of, your statement is perfect, and a perfect segue into this idea of DEI, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it becomes more challenging for your generation to consider DEI in the way that it probably, maybe it's been sold, to consider it being necessary, because you're like, no, no,
Oh
no,
yeah, yeah.
I'm going to give the best person the shot. Like, it doesn't matter. But the DEI thing is all about, look, there's so many people who have been not just overlooked, but they've not been given the chances that other people have to even get to the level that they're qualified. So there's this,
Disenfranchised.
exactly. So
Disenfranchised was the
there's
word I
this
was looking for.
idea that they've
Yes.
been disenfranchised, which now puts them in a position to not be the best.
Mm-hmm.
So you have an opportunity to open your door to someone who is not at the top of the meritocracy, but the person who's been disenfranchised. And by being around you and other people who are of merit, they have an opportunity now to reach that level.
Yeah.
That's difficult to do because you, Sam, want to be successful. And you, Sam, want people around you who are successful. It's very challenging to now take someone else on who is not on the level, but you're doing so because that person has been disenfranchised. So I'm really curious as how that's going to play out with the younger generation. Will they reach down a little bit below their standard because of that, or do you just go completely on merit? It's a challenge, man. I don't know what the answer is, to be honest.
Well, it's interesting because Papa Bear talked about loans. Like that's equivalent to me to a job, right? Like you leave that bank not knowing, was that because I was black or because I just really didn't qualify? Because there's a lot of language around getting a loan. There's a lot of like terms you don't understand and jargon you don't understand. And you're like, maybe I really wasn't qualified for this. And there was a story that came out about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, where a lady was given by a factor of 6 figures valuations on her home that were lower than they actually were. And the only way that she caught the appraisers doing this, basically devaluing her home, was that she had a white friend go in and pose as the owner, and the valuations were higher every single time there was a white person there by a factor of 6 figures. And so that's a way you can really find out. Now, obviously, there's been black people for decades are like, no, I didn't get the loan because I'm black. I know that because my friend over here is white, and and he got the loan, and we're the same
Works at the
person.
same factory with me.
Yeah. Yep. So we do know there are those examples, but yeah, that's kind of how you have to find out. And it goes back to the old trope of, what would happen if I dressed up as a black guy all day, or what would happen if I dressed up as a white person all day? How would I be treated, differently? Would I be able to hail a cab? The old Chappelle thing, and even Soul Man, which can't ever be made again, but like that movie. So, like you wonder what that other experience might be, and you're just never really quite all the way sure. But I do like the opening advice of, if it doesn't happen for you, don't let that stop you. Don't take it to heart. Just go to the next thing, because like Sam said, that's a limiting mindset. So they can only go so far. So that's even if they're like the hiring manager, maybe that's as far as they go. And you might have your eyes set a lot further than that.
Yeah, and I think the opportunities for
your sites.
I think the other opportunities, Sam, for like DEI specifically, like it doesn't always have to be race based. I think that's when it gets really challenging. I think that there are many disenfranchised and marginalized communities, even for people who look just like you, right? That's the thing. It doesn't have to be I got to hire a brown person, right? It could be that community has been disenfranchised and you're giving opportunities to that community. But it's just a balance, because there is that idea that, like you said, you want people around you that are of merit. And I think where the challenge comes is it your duty to give a handout to those who've been disenfranchised or not? And I think that's where the battle really is in this current society, is that I think that over the past several years, through many different types of, it's the idea of the woke culture or different things like that. It's pushing this on people to say, especially if you're white, cisgender, right, male, it is your duty to make up for the sins of your forefathers.
Right.
It is your duty to offer that hand. Where I think a different way to go about it is to say, hey, there are people who are in need. Those of you who are willing and able to provide an opportunity, please do. And if you're willing to do that, we can point you in the direction of folks who need your help. They may be brown skinned, they may be white skinned, they may be light skinned. It doesn't matter. They may be men, women, whatever that is. I think that going with that approach might actually help even people like yourself who are like, yeah, right, you've given me the option. You're not forcing it down my throat to do anything, because you, Sam, want to be successful. Your friends want to be successful. You want to have those people around you, but you also want to potentially have the option of helping, but you don't want to be, chastised for not doing it. Like, make it your choice.
We're asking other humans to not be human, to basically not have bias and see the world a little bit more clearly. And DEI is it's a tough one, man, because the actual practice of DEI versus sort of the talking points are so vastly different.
Exactly. I'm with you 100% on that.
I led a DEI team at a corporation years ago, right after George Floyd was murdered, and all the black people were incensed and upset, and we wanted to join together and form a coalition and really get the attention of the C-suite and all the stuff, and we did that. But as months went by, it started being less and less about being black and American. It started every diverse person around started to come in. Yeah, so you started to realize, wait a second. You have to ask the question, is being black the same as being gay? Is being black the same as being trans? Is being black the same as being handicapped and not from birth or from birth? Is being black
being female?
Yeah, is being black the same as being female? That's probably closer. Is being black the same as being bipolar? So we had people that they were diverse because they had a mental illness.
Yep.
Or so they were working through. Or is an ADHD person the same as a black person? And you're like, before I knew it, all the black people were dropping out. It wasn't about that anymore. It wasn't about them anymore. And it became trivial. And just like a lot of isms on paper that sound great, they just don't work in the real world, because once you add people to it, things can get a little choppy and a little weird really fast.